Welcome to Simplify Your Retirement with certified financial planner Stephen Strickland from Wise Wealth LLC. In this podcast, we help individuals and couples plan for a peaceful and enjoyable retirement. Join us on this journey where we explore the importance of simplifying the retirement planning process, as Stephen, with his years of experience and expertise in retirement income planning, along with guest experts, will help you achieve first wisdom, then wealth. And don't forget to check out the Simplify Your Retirement online course and other great resources at simplifyyourretirement.com. Now, on to the show.
Hello and welcome to Simplify Your Retirement with Stephen Strickland from Wise Wealth. Good afternoon, Stephen. How are you?
Doing great, Eric. How are you?
Doing fantastic. It is warming up. I'm enjoying the outside. You kind of hibernate inside with this whole COVID thing and all that stuff that was going on, and now it's nice enough to be out. So I'm very happy about that.
It's good for our health, good for our mental health, good for our physical health. That's for sure.
That's right. And I burn pretty easily, so I'm okay with that though. I mean, the sun is shining. I'll take it, even if it's a little bit of a burn. That's fine. All right. Today we're talking about retirement plans and kind of what goes into them, from what I understand, right?
That's right. So important.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's obviously, this could be probably 15 podcasts with everything that you guys do and as part of planning. But what are we focusing on today?
Well, when people think of, retirement income planning, I know that a lot of things, come to mind. And that's why I want to address that before we even get into details about all the various parts of putting together a plan. I know a lot of people look at their, retirement plan, quote unquote, and they say, well, I've got a 401k, so I've got a plan. Mm-hmm. Or, I've got a investment product, or I got an insurance product, or, I've got a portfolio, or, and they think, okay, yep, this is my plan for retirement. So when we're talking about a plan, we're talking about something that maybe includes all of those things, but those things in and of themselves are not what we would consider to be a retirement plan. They all make up the plan. They're all a part of it, but they're not a plan in and of itself. And, a lot of people, I always like to tell people that, hope is not a plan. Mm-hmm. I ask people, are you ready for retirement? Yep, I hope so. You have enough money saved up for retirement? Yep, I hope. Yeah. Are you going to run out of money in retirement? Hope not. You know what I mean? And so we really want to get people to a place where, definitely hope is a part of it, but that shouldn't be your plan by itself. There's more to it than that, and we can move from hope to certainty, that's for sure.
All right. What's that first step to move from hope to certainty?
Well, when we talk about having a plan, the first thing I like to let everybody know is that you really don't have a plan unless it is written down. Again, a lot of people have this plan. It's in their head. That's where it is. They know what their ideas are, and maybe they have a spouse that doesn't know what their ideas are. But we always recommend that everyone has a plan. And one way you know if you have one, first of all, is that it is written down. There was a study done by called The Benefits of Retirement Planning. It said there's a stark difference between those who have a formal written plan and those who don't. Half of pre-retirees and retirees who have a formal written plan say they feel very prepared for retirement, compared with just 17% of those without one. So, it's important, number one, that it is in writing. That's the first step. So I would ask the audience, first you have something that's written down that you can look at, that your spouse can look at, and you guys have agreed to. Yeah,
absolutely. I heard a phrase a long time ago, what gets measured gets done. I don't even know where I heard it, but that's always stuck with me. What gets measured gets done. I know that's a lot of what you do with planning and goal setting, but I always liken it to currently what I'm doing, which is working on my other house. I have to take a lot of measurements. If I don't write those measurements down, it may get done, but it's not going to get done well or accurately. It's important to get those things right.
Right. And then when you get busy, you can always go back to the plan. And, distractions come. And that's what we say about, retirement planning. Different things may happen. Life events happen. Stock markets change and so forth. But you always go back to the written plan, which should address a lot of these, uncertainties and a lot of the variables in the plan. So first, it's written down. Second is based on a person's individual goals. I know there's books written about, numbers and, what's the number that everybody needs to get to make sure they have a secure retirement. Well, that number is going to be different for every single person. And that's why retirement planning through a robo-advisor, so-called retirement planning done online, these things are very difficult because what I found is that real good retirement planning is based on a relationships, and it's based on good conversations, and it's based on proper questions. And it really needs to be based on, a couple of key questions. And number one is, what does retirement look like to you? And then, second, how much is that going to cost? How much income do you need per month? One of the most interesting things that happens to people when they retire is that they may go from a job where they get paid every 2 weeks or twice a month, and all of a sudden in retirement, you're basically getting paid once a month. Social Security comes in once a month. Your pension or annuity payments may come in once a month. And so you have to learn to live on a budget, once a month. So you have to know what your needs are. And so that's a process where we look at someone's retirement budget and figure out how much has to come in every month, not only to survive, but also have a desired lifestyle. We call it living expenses and lifestyle expenses. How much has to come in just to be able to pay the bills and live, but also how much would have to come in for you to be able to do the things that you enjoy. And so that's an extremely important part. And it goes, contrary to this whole idea of, all you need is 4%. As long as you don't take out more than 4% of your assets, you'll have a comfortable retirement. Or as long as you live on 80% of your pre-retirement income, you'll be fine. There's these general rules of thumb out there, but we think it's better to get specific and figure out how much income do you actually need per month to be able to support your lifestyle and retirement, where you live and what you want to do. So that's a huge factor.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some other factors?
So, absolutely. So it's got to be written down. It's based on your goals. And third is it has to address all the potential risk. And that's something that I wanted to really just give a broad overview today in today's podcast. And I know that you and I have talked, and we want to dig into all of these, in more detail in future podcasts. So I don't want anyone to think, I wish you'd said more about that. I'm just going to give it overview today. These are the risks that we feel like you do not have a retirement income plan unless you have an answer for these risks. And these risks I'm going to mention, all of them, there is an answer to them. There is a way to deal with them. And so that's why we want to make sure they're out there. The other two I'm going to give you real quick, because I know we're not going to have time to talk about it today, is there's 5 parts to a plan. It's got to be written down. It's based on your goals. It answers all of the risks. It's principles-based, which we have 5 principles of retirement income planning, which we'll talk about sometime. And then we have a 3-bucket approach that utilizes all these principles and manages all these risks. So I know we're building, little by little with our audience here and giving them information, just piece by piece.
Yeah, but that's a good preview for what's coming up. So that's fantastic.
Right. Exactly. I read something before. It was another study done by Society of Actuaries that said for many Americans, retirement, once viewed as a time of relaxation, travel, and enjoying life with family and friends, has evolved into a time of financial uncertainty and fear. And the reality is that most people, we meet, that's really the way they feel until they get a plan that does what we just said. It's written down, it's based on their goals, it addresses all the variables, it's principles-based, and it's a simple approach. So I look forward to taking people from a place where they are uncertain, where they are fearful, where they're not sure it's all going to work out, and get them to a place where they have confidence, which is really what a financial or retirement plan should do for someone. Give them confidence. And so, some of the big risks that are out there, that we want people to have a plan for is, one of the big ones is inflation. Inflation just means that obviously if someone lives 25 to 30 years in retirement, which is a reality for many people today, that means that the cost of goods over someone's lifetime could easily double with just, modest rates of inflation of like even 2.5%. So if you're living on a fixed income of $5,000 a month net, in retirement to start, that may give you a good lifestyle to begin. But by the time you're 90 years old or 85 years old, that may feel like you're only bringing in $2,500 a month. That's the idea. So you have to make sure that when you've got a plan, we've addressed that, hey, you need to make sure your income is able to keep up with inflation. And so that's one of the big factors. And that's a important point on another scale, because for people in retirement, there's 2 areas where the inflation rate is higher for seniors than it is for any other category. And that is for housing and for healthcare. So even if regular healthcare costs go up by a certain percentage every year, for people that are actually retired, those percentages, go up even higher. And so you really have to make sure inflation is addressed in your plan.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another one is, healthcare costs. People always wonder, how much that's going to cost, and we try to put together, a number to say, what it's going to cost per month. But on average, even someone on Medicare, the average cost of someone on Medicare is still about $5,000 a year per person. So, it's more than about $400 a month per person. So if I'm helping someone with their budget, we may budget $800 to $900 a month per couple, or, $400 to $500 per, individual. And so even though you go on Medicare when you turn 65, you still need to make sure you're counting, for those costs in your retirement plan. So that's a big one. Another one is long-term care. Obviously, to me, one of the biggest financial risks that people have going into retirement is a potential long-term care stay. And obviously, that's extremely expensive. It is not covered by Medicare. It is not covered by health care. And it only gets paid for, out of pocket or through an insurance policy. And so when someone has dementia or Alzheimer's, or they can't perform 2 out of the 6 activities of daily living, like eating or bathing or transferring from one room to another, all of a sudden Medicare and the healthcare industry basically says, well, that's not healthcare anymore. That's long-term care. And they stop paying for it, and you as the individual have to pay for it unless you have insurance to cover it. All kinds of statistics out there that show that the average couple age 65, 70% chance one of the two or both are going to need some sort of long-term care assistance over their lifetime. And as you know, Eric, that's very expensive. Where we are in the Kansas City area, the average cost per month for long-term care or assisted living things, it's about $5,000 a month.
Wow. Yeah.
And so it's a massive expense. And the average length of time in a long-term care facility is about 3 years. So if you take $5,000 a month for a year, $60,000. If you do that for 3 years, it's $180,000. So when I'm talking to a client, I always let them know that the financial risk of long-term care is $180,000 per person.
Jeez.
In retirement. So you either have to try to figure out a way to self-insure or, make sure we figure out a way to cover that. And that's part of planning, figuring out what is the best way to cover that massive potential future risk. No one knows if it's going to happen to them. So you've got to prepare for it.
Yeah, that's scary. I mean, that's just, there's so many other things that you want to be focusing on, when you're near retirement or in retirement. You just don't want to have to be concerned about all that.
So true. I mean, I really appreciate the fact that you said that, because you get to this place, you saved your whole life, you planned, and then all of a sudden, all the money you have saved up, you see it dwindling, going away to long-term care costs, or even your kids. You may have, your desire might have been, oh, this is my inheritance for my kids, and all of a sudden they're trying to make sure you're taken care of, and all the money they would have received is going to long-term care. It's just, the whole idea is someone can't just put their head in the sand and say it's not going to happen. The best thing to do is to look at it square and figure out what's the best way to cover that potential risk that's best for you, best for your family. And I do know the people that have that covered, they know they've got a plan for long-term care. There is a significant peace of mind for them as they're going through retirement. They don't have to sit there their whole retirement years and say, oh boy, we better not touch that money just in case I need it for the nursing home. We can't touch this. We can't go there. Can't do that because I may need it for assisted, those kinds of things. So it's just best to get it, deal with that risk, take it off the table, and enjoy your retirement. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another one is taxes. Obviously, we have got a major problem in this country with the federal debt. And then I look at historically the top federal tax rates in America. And right now, historically, we're very low when you look at what tax rates have been in the past. And so when I talk about retirement income planning and the risk of taxes going up, that's important because when someone starts retirement, I used an example earlier of $5,000 a month. We can figure out today when someone starts, well, you know what, if you take $5,000 a month in, you might be in the 15 to 20% tax bracket all in. But what we have to do when we put together a plan is say, hey, we're going to start with 15 to 20% tax, but we have to all know what we're going to do. Where are we going to get the money if they raise taxes from 20 to 30 or 20 to 40 over your lifetime, which is a very real possibility. So taxes have to be included in your plan.
So you're saying that Uncle Sam's going to want all that money back that they've used for the businesses and all the people out there.
Well, absolutely. I think a lot of people are shocked when they find out their Social Security income is taxed, Yeah. Even after all those years, they're paid into Social Security, and all of a sudden they have to pay tax on the way back out. But Yeah, I think there's a massive amount of debt in America, but there's also massive amounts of money sitting in people's 401ks, in IRAs, and qualified accounts that have never been taxed.
Mm-hmm.
And so you definitely just have to you have to look at it and say to me there's a very real possibility that one of the ways they can deal with the debt crisis in America is looking at people's 401ks. And so we got to have a plan that says, what would we do if taxes increased?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. Another one is, we just mentioned it, and that is, Social Security. Most people are counting on Social Security in retirement. But if you read a Social Security statement or go to their website, there's a statement that's been on here for years that says the law governing benefit amounts may change because by 2034, and that used to seem like a long time away, the payroll taxes collected will be enough to pay only about 77% of scheduled benefits.
Mm-hmm.
So, we just have to be aware and say, you know what, I don't want to scare anybody, especially people that are already in retirement or, to me, anyone that's close to retirement. I can't imagine them changing what you're going to get from Social Security. But the reality is the money coming in 2034 is only going to be enough to pay out 77% of benefits. So something has to be done with Social Security. And when we talk about financial planning and retirement planning, one of the things we have to do is say, if this is your Social Security amount when you start retirement, what would we do? What should we put in this plan to say what would happen if they dropped it by 25%?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying they'll do that. I don't think they will do that, but that's one of the things they certainly could do. And that's what good planning is. It's just looking at all the potential variables saying, okay, if taxes go up or Social Security goes down, what is the plan for that? And it's all written down.
Yeah. What are the options? That's definitely something you need to discuss.
Right, exactly. Another one is the fact that people don't have pensions. There's the risk of non-guaranteed lifetime income. I know the government just passed the Secure Act here at the end of 2019 that added some extra provisions so that annuities and things like this can be added to 401k plans because, when people used to retire, back maybe our parents' generation or even before that, most people had a pension. They didn't have a 401k.
Mm-hmm.
And the advantage of the pension, if you talk to anybody that has a pension, they love it because as long as they're alive, they're going to get paid.
Yeah.
It's a guaranteed income for life. And so a lot of people don't have pensions anymore from their companies. So you've got to figure out what's the best way to give you an income stream that's guaranteed or, as close to guaranteed as possible for as long as either you or your spouse is living.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
And then we just have, another couple more risks here, stock market volatility, obviously even in the last 20 years. So think about a 20-year period of time, 2000 through, May of 2020. In those 20 years, there's been 3 times where the market has dropped more than 20% in 1 year. Some of them, even more drastically, especially in 2008, 2009, was down over 40%. And then even this year, where it was down over 20%. So if you think about that, someone in retirement, someone who is planning for retirement, saving for retirement, they got a long way to recover. The stock market's probably going to recover if you have 5 years or more before you need money. But for someone who's living on withdrawals or living in what we call the distribution phase of retirement, and you're used to taking 4 to 5% out of your portfolio every year, if the market, eliminates 20% of your portfolio while you take out 5, there goes 1/4 of your entire savings, but you still need income the next year.
Yeah. Wow.
And so one of the biggest risks that I see people going to retirement is this whole concept of, average annual rates of return. Hey, as long as I average 6% a year and I pull out 5%, I should never run out of money in retirement. But the reality is it's very possible to average 6 and withdraw 5% a year and run out of money in retirement. And that's because of a thing called the sequence of returns. And I think, Eric, we'll probably have to have an entire show about that because that's probably one of the biggest things that most people don't understand. I would say, even many advisors in our industry, especially people, average Americans who just saved and saved for retirement, don't realize the impact that the order the returns comes in, what kind of an impact that makes once you're in the distribution phase.
Yeah, and that's something that they need to be speaking to a professional about because it's very complex. Very
complex. And it's very important because we don't have time to recover. Like I said, if you're 5 years out or more from retirement, you may be able to make some mistakes with your investing and have time to recover. But while you're in it, when you're 72 years old and the market goes down 40% one year and all your money's tied to the market, that can make a dramatic impact on everything else that you do. And that's not the uncertainty and fear we're trying to eliminate. And so with proper planning, I can tell you that there are ways to eliminate the sequence of returns risk, the stock market volatility risk, and give people peace of mind. And I know that's going to be a great show, and I look forward to talking about these things right here we're talking about right now in detail.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot to cover.
Yep. And then the last one I'll mention, right here, and that is just, people's own investor, behavior. That's another reason why people need a coach. You need to have a plan, because if you have a plan, then it gives you something to base your investment decisions on. When you don't have a plan, it's easy to buy and sell and get in and get out and overweight and underweight and, fear and greed and, all these things that happen to people because they're afraid of making a mistake. They're afraid because all their retirement depends on it. And that's why I think you and I talked before, and that is, it's never too early to have a retirement income plan. You really need to have one, because that should make your investment decisions for you. You make all your investment decisions going forward in the context of that plan. Where does it fit in the plan? What purpose is it accomplishing? Not is it a good investment? Not will it have a good rate of return? Not does it sound good? It's where does it fit in your plan? And that's why it's so important to have a plan.
Yeah.
And so, it eliminates investor behavior, which is the main reason why people don't get the rates of return they ought to get. And that's because of our own emotional, instincts. And why it's important not only to have a plan, but also a planner. And that's the biggest risk, the lack of a plan. All these risks, think about all the risks we talked about: long-term care, inflation, taxes, lack of Social Security. But to me, the biggest risk is if you don't have a plan. And here's how you know if you don't have a plan. It's not written down. You don't know what you would do about every single one of these risks we just talked about. It's not based on your goals, and it ought to be very specific, principles-based, written down, and an answer to what would we do if any of these variables happen to us. You can imagine the peace of mind someone would have if they knew, let's go to the plan. All right, the Social Security just went down or tax went up. What did the plan say we're supposed to do? What investments are we using for this and that? And that's what you do. So you start with the plan, and then we make our investment recommendations once the plan is in place.
Yeah, and the bottom line is that how much would you pay to sleep better at night? I mean, and so having that plan and being able to say, okay, this is what I need to be saving every month. This is what I need to be focusing on here. I think it's right. People just can really equate it to sleeping better at night. I know that I have a plan in place. I know that I'm doing a certain thing. Maybe I'm cutting some things out of my budget today to be able to save for tomorrow, whatever it is. But knowing that, man, I would love to have that much less stress in my life, right?
Some people call it, sleep insurance. You know what I mean?
There you go,
exactly. It's important to have it. And like you said, it really is about being able to sleep. There's no reason for someone who is, let's say, within 5 years of wanting to retire, still wondering if they're going to be able to retire. Is all going to work out? No, sit down with, somebody here, especially at Wise Wealth. We've all been trained on doing retirement income planning like this. But even during retirement, you work your whole life, you saved, you sacrificed to be able to save so that you can actually walk away. You think about anybody that actually retires, that means they literally, sacrifice some things to put money aside so that they can literally, get an income stream one of these days without working. So you finally get to that point, and the last thing you want to do is when you're 75 years old and 80, still be wondering, what are we going to do if this happens? What are we going to do if that happens? The stock market every day, going, so, there's a way to protect ourselves from all of these variables, protect the income, grow the rest. There's some of these principles that we're going to get into, I know, in another show that will just give people the peace of mind that they need. And then, the final risk I'll just mention real quick is longevity risk. Longevity is the big one. That's the risk of outliving your assets. It's, every survey of baby boomers, it always ends up being number one in the list. Longevity, the risk of outliving your assets. Most people don't know how long they're going to live. Most people don't know if they have enough money to make it that long. And so you have to deal with that risk. And it's important to deal with that risk simply because longevity risk is what we call the risk multiplier. The longer someone lives, the more potential that these other risks are actually going to affect them.
Mm-hmm.
Understand what I'm saying? So in other words, yeah, if you live a long time, inflation is going to affect you. If you live a long time, more than likely, taxes increases are going to come after you. If you live a long time, you may see changes to your Social Security. If you live a long time, you're going to experience stock market volatility. There will be massive 25, 30, 35, 40% drops in the market, several times during your retirement years. The longer someone lives. So you just think about it. So the longer someone's lived, the more potential these other risks have an ability to impact. And so we've got to deal with longevity, make sure we know what someone's income need is, and we know how to, guarantee that as much as possible for as long as, they're alive.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's the thing. Living longer is fantastic. I would love for my parents to live longer, but at the same time, we also know that medical expenses, it's going to cost more to live longer. I haven't seen medical costs go down. That's just me, but it's
true.
Great, but it'll definitely cost you to live longer. So all those things, that is definitely the multiplier there.
True.
Are there any other things that we need to cover today? I mean, you've given so many previews of upcoming podcasts. We probably have 10 just sketched out right now, which is fantastic. But anything else we need to hear for today's podcast?
Yeah, the only other thing is I'm really focused on, what is an actual retirement income plan today. And, we've talked about it, written based on your goals, answers all the risks. It's based on principles. And it is, we use the 3-bucket approach to handle that. But the reason why I make such a big deal about those things that I just mentioned is because I see a lot of retirement income plans or financial plans that's 100% based still on asset allocation or a risk tolerance profile. Most financial planning amounts to answering the questions on a risk profile questionnaire and then giving some investment advice that tinkers with the asset allocation and diversification. Again, all those things are extremely important, but it's all within the context of a plan. There's way more to it than just a Monte Carlo report that shows what percentage chance you have of not outliving your money. And there's a lot more that goes into it than just an investment, portfolio recommendation.
Yeah.
You notice today, even during our conversation, this whole show has been about what goes into a plan, and I haven't even talked about portfolios. Or how you should build, how your portfolio should be instructed, or what your asset allocation should be, because all those decisions are based within, once we know what the plan is and how much assets you have and when you want to retire and those sorts of things, then we can address those other things. So I see that most financial planning, quote unquote, falls short because it only addresses investment risk, or or someone's risk profile, and only handles, the actual investment risks that are out there, not these other ones like healthcare, inflation, taxes, those sorts of things. So just make sure, I would tell the audience this, to make sure that you actually have a plan that prepares you for retirement, not just for investing.
Yeah. And Stephen, I know that this is not a podcast about scare tactics or any of that stuff. You talked a lot about risk today. And really, I know the purpose of you doing that is to make people ask the question, am I covered? And that's what I think that everybody listening to this, all those different podcast ideas that you just spilled out today, we're going to be covering in future podcasts. But I'm assuming there's a lot of people with questions right now that would like some answers. So how do they get a hold of you so that you can start answering those questions for them?
Yes, thank you. The best way to do that would be to go to our website, which is simply wisewealth.com, WISEWEALTH, wisewealth.com. There's a contact us button on that website they can go to and reach out to us. They can also call our office at 816-246-WISE. That's 816-246-9473. They can contact us, and we'll send them we'll have a conversation, send a quick worksheet, and help people get started. And I appreciate what you just said, though, again, Eric, because, we're talking about risk, not to, to scare people, but because these are the things that are so important that often get overlooked, that once they're addressed, you talk about being able to sleep, you talk about being able to have peace of mind, that's what will give it to someone.
Yeah,
we're
absolutely.
Happy to help anybody that wants to reach out.
Yeah, anybody who's studied history knows that it's not always pleasant. It's not always fun to talk about the things that have happened in history, but we need to know what happened in history so that history doesn't repeat itself. And it's the same thing. You're telling people things as an educational component of what you do, and we all need to know about them and not stick our heads in the sand like ostriches. We just need to be able to face them and say, okay, let me make sure that I'm okay with this specific risk or this situation. So, Stephen, thank you so much for your time today.
You're welcome. Great to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, audience, for tuning in and listening to the Simplify Your Retirement podcast with Stephen Strickland. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Stephen comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it much easier to share these podcasts with your friends and family. And if you've got somebody in your circle of friends or within your family that is looking at retiring fairly soon, next 5-10 years, maybe this is one you want to share with them. They need to hear about these different things so they can be prepared and do the right thing and make sure they have that plan in place. Again, thank you so much for listening today. For everyone at Wise Wealth, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Simplify Your Retirement podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Wise Wealth LLC or Simplify Your Retirement. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of a financial advisor or other qualified financial professionals with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.